Hello to everyone in the chat and everyone saying hi to Jason. Welcome back. It's kind of like we have a celebrity today that's popped back in for a visit.
That's a poor excuse for a celebrity.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us today in and why energy code matters. So we have a special guest here, as we just talked about and joked, celebrity coming back. Jason is on board with us to do a presentation. He's learned a lot more about insulation, I'm sure, from where he's at currently with NAIMA. But as always, just a little bit of housekeeping. Today's webinar is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, which you can find by searching Spear on our YouTube channel or on YouTube, or you can go to our partnership at eepartnership.org on our website. Look at our news section. You'll find it under our resources page. So within 72 hours of today's presentation, you will receive a course evaluation email from Kathy Lawrence. Please complete the survey and send it back to her to receive your course completion certificate, and that will contain your course ID that you'll need to use when you're reporting your CEUs to ICC. Lastly, as always, chat feature will be open, so will the Q&A. I'll monitor both of those. We'll go through questions as they come up, and then we'll hopefully we won't run long today. I think Jason said about 45 minutes today, so we got plenty of room for questions. And so those that are new to Spear, that are on here for the first time, just a short intro to Spear. We're a nonprofit. We're one of 6 RIOs, which is Regional Energy Efficiency Organization. We are member-based, and we cover Texas and Oklahoma. So our focus is on outreach for education, collaboration with clean energy. We can always help answer questions with Energy Code, ASHRAE 90.1. We work with plan reviewers, building officials, third-party inspectors, and the likes. Anyone that has questions regarding the IECC and the Energy Code, always happy to help. We continue to assist cities with their adoption of the 2021 and navigate additional amendments as they're made to help lessen the impact of adoption on some of your builders in your community. So Jason, I will stop sharing my screen. I'll let you share your screen and you can take it away and reintroduce yourself and what you've been up to.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Vandever. Wow, when I say that, I want to say Energy Code Program Manager for Spear so bad. That is the next thing that comes off the tongue because I've done so many of these for Spear. I was Randy's predecessor at Spear. For the new folks, I've been gone for almost 2 years. Randy, I'm sure, has more than capably taken my place and professional, added some professionalism and classed up the joint, no doubt about it. But that's just kind of not how I roll. He reached out to me not too long ago. Said, hey, you want to give a presentation for us? And I said, sure, but I don't really give presentations anymore. I sent him a slide deck of, so now I am the Director of Technical Services for the North American Insulation Manufacturers Association. Kind of like Spear. That's why they call Spear Spear. Well, that's why we call the company I work for NAIMA. It's just a whole lot of words otherwise. Been with NAIMA a couple of years or so, and supposed to be in. I'll tell you a little bit more about NAIMA as we get there. A little bit about me for the new folks. I grew up doing construction, so I have that wore the tool belt kind of background. But the primary lens in which I focused energy codes through is the building official lens. I spent almost 10 years in building inspection and as a building official. And so I think about things, as they come across the permit clerk's desk. And then spent 7 years with Spear. So, the tree hugging hippie trying to save the planet, did that for 7 years. And so I try to kind of blend those, wore the tool belt, enforce the code, tried to save the planet, but to kind of have a logical, a realistic approach to energy code. I know Randy approaches a lot of it the same way. Besides being infinitely more professional, I'm sure we really kind of approach a lot of these things the same way. Let's go ahead and get started. There'll be plenty of minutes for Q&A. So the agenda, again, in no particular order, as my style, I'm going to continue with my style. I sent Randy, he goes, yeah, you want to do a presentation? I don't do them anymore. I go, well, here's some slides I put together about builders and costs that I was given to now I give presentations to our policy and practice committee and to our executive committee So now it's a little bit different audience. There's just a handful of people in the room, and it's not really energy code. I'm still in the energy code world, but it's not 100% energy code centric. So I sent him those slides, and he goes, "Yeah, I'll just make up a description for you and throw it on there, and you can just figure it out." So the description in the webinar is not exactly 100% accurate. We'll certainly talk about some of those things that Randy wrote up, but it's largely going to be winging it, off the cuff ideas and remarks. There are those 15 or 20 slides, what the heck with the builders. Talk a little bit generally about some silly legislation coming across the country, and just the growing political divide, and how, if, gosh, the red likes it, the blue can't, and vice versa, and how I can't help but go off on some tangents and some rants about, man, we got to change some things. And then always mailing it in. I mean, that's pretty much my MO. As Liz John told me, I'll never forget it. She's with Spear. She's like, "Oh man, you were mailing it in the last year." And then, some kind of better ideas for building. So there's a couple of serious things, largely just winging it. So let's get started. So who is NAIMA? The company I work for now, we are a trade association. We're a nonprofit trade association, 501c6, so we can do lobbying, unlike Spear. And we represent not all insulation manufacturers. We represent rock wool, mineral wool, and fiberglass manufacturers in North America. I mean, that some of our member companies, you see the logos of the member companies across the bottom. Really kind of the big five that most people have heard of: Rockwool, Owens Corning, Knauf, Johns Manville, and CertainTeed. Those are the big boys, but we have other folks as well. And we deal with a lot of, I stay in my energy code world. Back with when I spent 7 years with Spear, I had the wonderful advantage of only needing to know Texas and Oklahoma and the energy code and how it related in those two states. Well, now with NAIMA, I need to know the energy code for all 50 states and how the code bodies develop the code in all 50 states. Is it legislatively? Is it a code board? Is it governor appointed? And to try to affect change in these states, that's super important, because, red states with governor appointed code boards are different than blue states with and it's just all across the board. And so I'm still just, in true Jason style, just trying to figure it out and faking it till I make it. I'm just now starting to kind of figure out what I'm doing with NAIMA. But I've got a long way to go. Luckily, my boss is super smart, and Charlie Hack, my boss and his boss are both super smart. NAIMA like Spear though, 6-7 people, real small group, and a lot of impact. I mean, I think we do a lot of good work, and I know Spear does. I'm super proud of the work that I did at Spear, and I know they continue it going forward. Just really making a difference, and I think Spear gets more bang for their buck than any of those other Rios that Randy showed on that first slide. So supporting Spear, I would highly encourage everyone to continue to do that. It's a great organization. I have to throw this slide up there. This is from my Spear presentation. So NAIMA gave Spear a little money 5 years or so ago, and NAIMA wanted me to, I drove around the state of Texas. I called insulation installers and was like, "Hey, can I come give your crew a grade 1 insulation installation presentation?" And so I would leave out of my house 4 in the morning, sometimes, depending how far I had to drive. I told my boss at Spear, I'm not setting the alarm for any earlier than 4. Any earlier than 4, I'm getting a hotel the night before. But I would roll into these insulation warehouses 6 or so in the morning, cooler full of breakfast tacos and Gatorades, and put my little portable projector and screen up in this insulation warehouse. And after I did a few of them, I quickly realized the majority of insulation installers in Texas, English is not their first language. And so I translated all of my slides and just had Spanish subtitles in all of my slides when I was doing these presentations. And this is the most important one. This is the best slide I ever made in any of the presentations I ever gave. And I leave it in Spanish so I can just kind of talk about it and what it means. And the code officials on this call, and the plan reviewers on this call, and the raters on this call today, this slide basically says, man, don't underestimate the job you guys do. It's really more important than you realize. And the reason being, and we all know, those of us doing inspections, man, how much easier is it to give a green tag? It's just so much easier, right? I mean, I hated giving red tags. You're going to get griped at. You got to go back, and it's just, oh, there's just a few crummy things about this insulation installation. I'm going to go ahead and give it, it's Friday. I'm going to go ahead and give it a green tag and get on down the road. Well, the single mom or the little old couple trying to afford medication, if their utility bill is $20 a month, every single month, more than it should be, that's, and if you can change that, that's why your job is so important. So don't underestimate the job. Everybody pat themselves on the back, and don't underestimate the job you guys do. But try to get a little better every day. Whether if you're a raider and you notice something your builders are doing wrong, maybe as raiders, you don't just have to focus on the insulation. When you're walking up to the job and you see that they've screwed up their weather resistant barrier details, or they didn't get their head flashing on their windows right, or whatever it may be. Some of these items that, again, the single mom, heck, single moms can't, I mean, I don't know how people are affording homes today. And certainly at the interest rates now, a firefighter married to a teacher and the interest rates today, I don't know how you make a mortgage payment. And certainly if you can keep those utility bills in check by doing a good job with the inspection. And then on the resiliency side, noticing some of those things that will affect. I've got a million pictures that I've shown on previous presentations on houses that you can just see. This house is going to need a $60,000 repair, in under 10 years, because they didn't do the grading and drainage right, or the weather resistant barrier details right, or, oh my gosh, don't get me started on stucco. That was one of the last things I was trying to change before I left Spear. We don't do stucco anywhere close to correct. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So, energy code. What is the energy code all about? Well, it's about saving energy in buildings, right? I mean, we're still using about 41% of the energy in the United States is used in buildings, and about 75% of electricity is used in buildings. So reducing the energy use in buildings is crucial to, the old carbon reduction, tree hugging, hippie greenhouse gas slant of all this. Now I work for industry. It's really just about how many more pounds of insulation can we get in buildings, but more insulation in buildings isn't necessarily a bad thing. And insulation in buildings drives this graph down towards net zero. Here we have net zero, the 0%. This is the 100%. Most, like your HERS scores and stuff, there's a lot of baselines that started here with the 2006 IECC. That's where your HERS score. So a HERS of 100 is based on the 2006. Well, we had a big 7-8% efficiency jump in 2009, a little bit of increased envelope, but really that was driven by the duct testing that came in. I'll try to kind of monitor. Oh yeah, and HERS is proprietary. Oh yeah, that's the Dillons know that well. And those guys are trying to doing good work as well. And lots of the folks on the call today, man, I just can't say enough how impressed I am with so many folks. I mean, I bet I met 1,000 people working the 7 years for Spear. And lots of them were just getting a paycheck and going on about their day, but lots of them were really trying to make a difference. Certainly, I'd give a shout out to Connor for being one of those, and his dad, Brett, as well. So then we had another big jump going from the 09 to the 12. Now, this was largely driven by the envelope played a big part here, but then also in 2012, the blower door tests came in. Then we chugged along 12, 15, 18, the exact same envelope, except for U factor got a little better in some climate zones. But other than that, basically exact same envelope. And then we took a big jump with the 2021. And supposedly we're taking another 5-6% jump with the 2024. But I suspect with some envelope reductions and equipment trade-offs, I think we're going to have actually some more energy in buildings on the performance paths in the 24. I'll talk a little bit more about the 2024 development and some unfortunate things that happened with the development of the 2024. So the impetus of the 2024. So and I was still at Spirit this time. So we did a big Bill Fay's energy efficient. Well, no, it wasn't EECC. Anyway, but we got a lot of material basically. Hey, spread the word. We did webinars to get governmental member voting representatives registered across the state of Texas and across the country. And there were a lot of improvements that didn't make it out of committee. So the energy code until the last cycle was developed like all the other codes. And for anybody new on the call today or new to the code world, new inspectors, new plan reviewers, well, the code, anyone can make a code change proposal. Anyone. I mean, it really doesn't matter. My 10-year-old daughter can make a code change proposal. But then all those code change proposals, you get a chance to express why you think it's important and talk to the committees that are hearing them, who then vote on them. And then ultimately the governmental member voting representatives, so the inspectors and plan reviewers and code officials and sustainability folks, those are the ones that get to vote what makes it into the final code. Well, we had a big get out the vote campaign with Spear and all the other Rios. And a lot of the improvements that were voted down during the committee process made it in the final vote. And so there was a big appeals. Of course, the home builders threw up their arms, and it was a big headache for the ICC board of directors. And let me go ahead and give a caveat here. Builders aren't bad people. I'm friends with lots of builders, and oh my gosh, I understand the challenges builders have with material cost, with subcontractors. I mean, that's got to be like herding cats. I mean, your painter got drunk and didn't show up again, or whatever it may be. I certainly don't envy builders and the challenges they face. Nevertheless, just building homes, it seems like it's one of the few things that we do today that we've always done it that way, and it's like, wow, it's if we've been doing it that way for 60 years, maybe we need to get a little better. And so that's what I always encouraged my builders when I was a building official. I would try to find one thing a month that was new, that I didn't know, that I didn't realize, some building science things, some resiliency things, some energy code thing, whatever it may be. And try to, you don't want to, particularly if you're a new inspector, you don't want to start red tagging everything, because there's lots of jurisdictions that it's been the same way, and you're going to get run out of town, right? I mean, you've got a mortgage to pay too. But if I always felt like the builders and I were on a team, and if you approach it that way rather than adversarial, you can get a whole lot better buy-in, and we can get some of these better efficiency gains and more resilient homes. And as you can tell already, I meander all over the place and go from subject to subject. So back on this code development. Well, the 2021, the ICC board of directors, and that's why I got off on the tangent. That's another thing. The ICC board of directors, man, I don't envy some of the hard decisions they had to make. I personally think they made a bad one recently. I kind of think they made a bad one moving the ICC development to a standards process. So no longer do the governmental member voting representatives have the final say. It's developed through a standards committee. And those committees, to make changes in the code, you have to have 2/3 voting. Well, the committee is stacked with about half builder interests and half efficiency interests. So it's real hard to get changes to get into the code now for the 2024. Well, during the 2024 development, let's see if that's my next slide. I've never given that. Yep. So the bad news first. So during the 2024 development, one of the absolute rock stars of the energy code and code development world, Gayatri Vijay Kumar, who does not like you pronouncing her name wrong, by the way. She and I did a what's new in the 2024 presentation at ResNet, I think it was. Yeah, it was at the ResNet conference. Well, the 2024, during the development of the 2024, since you needed that 2/3 vote to change anything, well, nothing was getting through. So Gayatri, and her infinite wisdom and just dedication to hard work, absolute rock star. She goes in and creates what she calls an omnibus proposal. So basically, she took 4 or 5 things the builders hated, 4 or 5 things the efficiency folks hated, brought them together, and we all, the hallmark of good compromise is both sides kind of hate it a little bit. And that's basically what came out. So the efficiency folks hated that the envelope was reduced, and me being representing people that put insulation in cavities, we really hated that the envelope was being reduced. But what's real big in the tree hug and efficiency hippie world these days? Well, it's all about solar ready, EVs, and electrification. Oh my goodness, electrification is just like the holy grail. Me personally, when I was with Spear, I didn't buy. I was a little bit of the black sheep in the tree hugging hippie efficiency world, because give me a 96% efficient furnace over an electrified building that's hooked up to a gas plant. Anyway, I could just see both sides. And so Gayatri created this omnibus proposal that had, but again, both sides kind of hated, but it made it into the final code because it was the only thing that could get that 2/3 vote. And it ended up being, it had 90% of the votes by the time this all was said and done. Well, then again, there was another appeal for the 2024. So it's largely the gas interests. And so that there were 3 days of hearings at the ICC appeals board. There was a 4 or 5 person appeals board. Actually, the CBO of San Antonio, here where I live, was on the appeals board. And the ICC appeals board, there were 5 different reasons for the appeals, violating scope and intent. It doesn't really matter what the reasons were, but the appeals board found there was no impropriety, there was no validity of any of these appeals whatsoever. They gave that decision to the ICC board of directors. And then the ICC board of directors on March 18th, so just a few days ago, shockingly to me, went against all of the recommendations from the appeals board. And so here's the problem with that. So the builders' interests, they got the reductions in the envelope. Well, that was a trade-off for the EV ready, solar ready, and electrification, right? Well, ICC board of directors, all of that EV ready, solar ready, and electrification, well, that all got yanked out of the code and put in an unenforceable appendix. Unless you specifically adopt the appendices in the ICC codes, those appendices are not part of the code. And so the efficiency gains in the envelope that were made in the 2021 that my industry loved so much, those got stripped out. And then all the EV ready, solar ready, and electrification measures that the tree hug and hippie world that got in, well, those on appeal are now in appendices. So this is an absolute mess. And what I really hate, I mean, there's people that spend hundreds of hours. I'm sure there's a person or two on the call. I mean, I can't tell you how many hundreds of hours of code hearings I participated in developing this 2024 and all this work in a consensus process. Well, the consensus agreed that this was going to be the thing. The appeals board agreed that everything was done on the up and up. And the ICC board of directors, bam, last minute, yanks it all out. It's going to put it in appendices. The 2024 energy code should be on the street, I'm guessing, the first half of April or so. ICC staff, and that's another thing. I mean, ICC staff, oh my gosh, Chris Stinger is an absolute rock star that he's got to go back through and dot all the I's and cross all the T's and move that stuff to the appendices after it was all developed. I just feel sorry kind of across the board. And again, I understand the ICC board of directors has some really some challenging things to think about, and they don't need preemptions and lawsuits and all the things they worry about, but still kind of think they may drop the ball there. So that's the bad news. let's get on. We're going to stay largely happy. Let's move on to one more. So this is kind of good and bad. And really just this slide is just to remind me that, well, you know, what are the codes? Well, the codes are the absolute crummiest home you can build by law, right? Well, the problem is code inspectors and plan reviewers, we all know portions of the code. I mean, I defy anybody that knows it all. I mean, I'm sure somebody out, a savant out there with perfect memory could recite the whole thing to you, but could he apply it in the field? You know, could he identify some of those things in the field? Probably not. Um, and so if those are the crummiest homes we can build by code, I just think, to me, generally, I think it's time that we really just start improving this. And because that's the way we've always done it, is just the worst excuse to stay status quo than I could think of. And I'll cover here at the very end, I'll go over some resources and just kind of put a few ideas in your head about some other building practices and just some other ideas that can increase resiliency, and just kind of talking about going above code. Because I just, to me, in today's day and age, you know, we need to be thinking about building buildings that are going to be robust for 100 or 200 years, not this, you know, I mean, I see some brand new homes. I know I saw some, there was a whole subdivision in El Paso when I was doing a training one day, that I was thinking, man, every single home here is going to need a $60,000 repair in 10 years. You could just, there were just some real issues there. So anyway, that's just kind of that's what that slide was reminding me about. So let's move on to some good news. So I mentioned that 41% of energy use is in buildings and 75% of electricity use. Well, the good news is, and I would argue a lot of this is driven by energy codes, right? I mean, because yeah, we'll build what, 200,000 single family homes in Texas this year, plus 250. Well, there's 100 times that already on the ground. You know, how many of them have single pane windows? How many of them are just flat out energy pigs? Well, the good news, you know, average energy consumption per household is going down. And that's, if that doesn't tell you that, hey, newer homes with better energy codes are the way to go, you know, nothing will. And looking at, so one of the things that I do, again, I'm responsible for all 50 states now. So it's no longer, I'm going to talk about nationwide code adoption, nationwide laws that are coming through. And so this won't all be Texas and Oklahoma. Y'all can ignore these parts if you want. But just looking at, one thing that's clear to me is that once you engage energy professionals, homes get built better. They really do. And again, one more time, I want to encourage the energy professionals here to do more than just do the energy inspections. Try to think about some of these resiliency things and catch those things at inspection. You can provide so much more value to your builder than you think if you really get in there, because the number one reason a builder gets sued is water intrusion. Take a look at the windows. Take a look at the weather resisted barrier. You know, you might be able to save your builder a headache and more importantly, give that homeowner a better, more resilient home that's not going to need a monster repair. This slide is just kind of highlight. So the blue bar is the percent above code. So, you know, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 on the side here. This is percent above the prescriptive R value in the wall. So about 8, 9% in Indiana, Minnesota. Here's one thing, and I'll talk about it again here later. Utah is actually worse. Why is Utah the only state that when you engage an energy professional, that you actually get a worse wall? That doesn't make any sense. Well, the reason being, they've got this little loophole. It's because you can build 5% above the Utah 2012 res check. And so that's kind of, I've got to get into the weeds of all these codes through all 50 states and figure out these loopholes, write letters to legislators. I testified at the Utah code hearing the other day, and you know, 2 or 3 people testify. Of course, the builder does and tells them, unfortunately, so legislators have no business writing code. Legislators need to stay a million miles away from construction code. Yet in 10, 15, 20 states across the nation, it's the legislators that are writing the code changes. Well, guess who brings the legislator the new code changes? 19 times out of 20, it's the builders that write it straight, and they just give it to the legislature. And this was no different in Utah. And I go up there and testify, and I'm like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. You're leaving this 2012 loophole in there. I got on the res check the other day in Utah and played around with some numbers. Well, you can put, if everything else is code in the envelope, you can put R8 in the wall and be 5% above Utah 2012. If everything else is code, you can be R16 in the ceiling in climate zone 6 in Utah. And so identifying and getting rid of some of these loopholes is crucial. But in general, once you engage these energy code professionals, you're typically going to get better walls and ceilings, a better house, better envelope. A lot of that's driven through utility incentives. There's a variety of reasons why it happens. A lot of builders use HERS as a marketing campaign. Hey, look, our homes are better than others, et cetera, et cetera. So engaging those energy code professionals is crucial. Unfortunately, through a lot of the South and Southeast, blower door tests and duct tests aren't required. Well, if testing isn't required, the energy code professionals aren't engaged. And so you don't get details on the plans. You don't get insulation inspected. I remember 5-6 years ago when I was with Spear, I called 40 jurisdictions in Oklahoma. 2 of them even did an insulation inspection. 38 of the 40 didn't even look at the insulation, just trusted the builder. Again, so energy codes, hey, 126 billion cumulatively saved by 2040. That's a big deal. And not only are we saving homeowners money, but what's another direct benefit of energy code, right? Oh my gosh, air, right? Oh, who likes clean air? Raise your hand. I'm assuming we've all got our hands raised, right? Who likes drinking water? I mean, I prefer mine with hops in it, but I like drinking water as well. And water use directly correlated energy use. So if we can reduce energy use, we're saving water, we're making the air better. It's just an absolute no-brainer to save energy in buildings. Good news, more good news. That little green slice of the pie, again, back on my electrification rant. Well, look at where our primary energy sources are. Oh my gosh, still 10% of coal. Well, so we're going to sell envelope down the line because the cool thing in the tree hugging hippie efficiency circles is electrification. And so we're going to, if a builder can go ahead and put in a gas appliance, and with the 2024, they were going to have to run a wire to make it easier for the homeowner to switch to electric later. Well, lots of folks aren't ever. And so we paid to manufacture the wire. We paid to ship the wire. We used energy to install the wire that's never going to get used. Man, give me a 96% efficient furnace and let's just call it good. But that's, again, my thinking didn't really align with the efficiency folks. But since this was about, what was it? I looked 10 years or so ago, this has gone up by 50%. Texas actually leads the nation in wind. So good news here, wind, solar, a lot of these renewables, they're on their way up. Coal's on its way down. Good news on the good news front. And as always, I am very 45 minutes right. I mean, I'm going to have to cut the end of my slides because I can't help but just talk too much. So I'm going to breeze through these next slides. They're basically, so I put these slides together for our executive committee, and we were just looking at the 2021. So the 2021 is the holy grail for insulation manufacturers because it was a robust envelope increase. And of course the builders, oh my gosh, it's so much more expensive. It's so much more expensive. Well, it's really not. Looking at it by climate zone. And my favorite graphic to always show was always, well, yeah, if your mortgage, I mean, most people finance their homes over 30 years, right? Well, if you fold some of these additional costs into a 30-year mortgage, if my 30-year mortgage goes up $20 a month, but I save $25 a month on my utility bill, Well, from the day I move into that house, I'm putting $5 a month in my pocket, right? And cash flow, nobody's paying cash for houses. It's cash flow is king. Well, if who wouldn't rather pay $20 extra a month on their mortgage to save $25 a month on a utility bill? It's an absolute no-brainer. Kind of some highlights of what drove these added costs. In climate zone 4 and climate zone 5, the base wall was an R20. Well, there came in a +5 continuous insulation requirement. So the continuous insulation requirement was a main driver of these codes. Also in the 2021, an additional efficiency option came in. So that's about a $600, $700, $800, $900 driver for all of them. So that's a big piece of all of them. Well, and then climate zone 7 and 8, there was a HRV, ERV requirement kicked in. So better walls, HRV, ERV. The rest of these, the majority of it was the additional efficiency. And again, on a cash flow basis, most of them paid for themselves in just 2 or 3 years on a cash flow basis. But that's according to Pacific Northwest National Lab, right? Well, the Home Innovation Research Lab, which is funded by the NAHB, the National Association of Home Builders, will look at their cost projections. I mean, they were up to dang near $10,000 in climate zone 4 and climate zone 5. So we look at, this is the PNNL cost projection and the home builders cost projections. So it was 2-3 times across the board in all climate zones. So an independent third party was commissioned to look at both of those reports, to do their own analysis, their own report. I think this one's a little more accurate. ICF, you notice it's a little higher than PNNL's in most climate zones, actually a cheaper in a couple as well. But wow, surprise, surprise, ICF's and PNNL's pretty on board, on point, right? And what's the outlier here? The NAHB's cost estimates. When we look at building construction by component, what are some of the things? I mean, builders typically, oh my gosh, the lumber package, right? The lumber package can go through the roof. Well, we see, so this is based on component. We look at insulation. Again, I'm putting these slides together for our executive committee. Well, on insulation, it's about 2%, 1.7 to 2.2%. We're not seeing big jumps in insulation. So really, griping about added insulation in homes, even at 2022, some jurisdictions were on the 2021 at this point. We're not seeing a bump. What drives the cost of construction? Well, it's all the other things in that previous chart that drives 60% of it. Land, of course, if anybody's tried to buy any land lately, that's going through the roof. I think what's interesting, what remains constant at about 9 to 10 to 12%, this profit margin. And that's why I finally figured it out. I was like, gosh, if builders are making 9 or 10%, wouldn't it be better for a builder if a home was more expensive? I mean, I'd rather make 9% on 100,000 than 9% on 90,000, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer. And really what I came to realize is it's not the code changes, which are minuscule, 0.5 and PNNL and ICFs, or even if that 3 times the NAHB's estimate, it was still only 1.4%. That's not the driver. What the builders hate, and again, I do have sympathy for the builders. It's going to seem like I'm bad mouthing them, but I'm not. I just generally want them to get a little bit better, and they're so reticent and hesitant to change. Where was I going with that? I don't even remember. Anyway, let's go on to the next one because I'm running out of time. It's codes driving the cost. It's codes driving the cost. Well, it's not really codes, right? We just saw it was a 0.5 to 1.4%. Look at when the lumber prices and the steel prices spiked, directly correlated to home price spikes. Again, I put these slides together to just try to kind of get to the bottom of it. Then I went and looked at, man, who are the top builders and how many homes are they building? Well, in the top 20, so of the housing units sold, look at this, the top 20, 343,000, and the top, and more than half of the total homes built. I mean, it's just amazing what the top builders, how the consolidation of the home building industry is happening. I've got another slide here to makes it a little more apparent. And here it is. And so once we consolidate, so in 2021, the top 20 builders, here's their piece of the pie, 44%, 20 to 120, 17%. Look what happens in 2022. You know, right? Here's all the rest over here in 2021. Here's all the rest in 2022. The top 120, over half the pie now. 20 to 120, 21%. And with money comes power, with power comes influence. So who do you think is having the biggest impact in code hearings? Who do you think has the biggest impact with legislators? This blue square right here. And so builders hate change. Oh my gosh, having to add continuous insulation, having to go to 2x6 construction when they were at 2x4, having to all change in the process is what builders hate. It's not the added cost. The added cost, they're just gonna make another 9%. It's the change. And so really trying to understand that, understand who are the power players, and it gives me the tools that I ultimately I fail most of the time, but gives me the tools that at least I can use to try to make a difference. Fastest growing states, you know, Texas, Florida, California, North Carolina, and Arizona. You look at the total single family homes and look at the percent built by the top 20 builders. It's more than half in most of the states, right? And where am I at? I'm 13. And here, I like this one. This one's one of my favorite. So D.R. Horton, the biggest builder in the nation, right? Well, right in, where are we at? Right in here, publication of the 2021. That's going to be the end, the demise of the builders and the ruin the affordability of homeowners. Well, their stock seems to have done okay to 2024 after the publication of the 2021, right? I mean, I think I wish I would have put a bunch of money in D.R. Horton right there, right? And this just kind of highlights the, you know, NAHB's numbers and census or government numbers, man, they're just never in line. Roughly following the same chart, but oh my gosh, back to the firefighter married to a teacher. I just don't know how you're affording new homes these days. Now this one I put together, so I looked at code stringency. So I started 2006 as the baseline, and I was just kind of charting, is there a relationship between the average home price and code stringency? Well, you can see as sometimes it's going up, the other one's going down and vice versa. Doesn't appear to be too correlated between code stringency and home price. Average home price versus builder profit. Well, the average home price, bam, man, it's up and down as the market changes. Builder revenue, that's just steadily cruising right along, you know, going right up. Builder profit, wow, that follows right along. They're going to make 9, 10, 12%, no matter what it is. And so, again, not to badmouth the builders, but maybe just to highlight some of the myths. I mean, we've all heard, oh gosh, for every $1,000, one of the famous quotes of NAHB, for every $1,000 increase in the price of a home, we price 140,000. It's just this tale of woe. We price 140,000 people out of being able to buy a new home. Well, I don't remember any builders ever trying to talk home buyers out of granite, or, you know, I mean, I understand it's a market driven thing, and ultimately I'm a market guy more than anything. But let's truly allow the market to do it. Let's don't have the powerful builders going in there and monkeying with stuff on the front end through legislative hamstrings and loopholes and all this other stuff. But if we look again, home price and the number of homes purchased, well, they're not, it's sometimes they're going up when one's going down and vice versa. Doesn't appear that a home price is all that correlated to people buying homes. The number of housing starts, or we're just going to quit building homes if you're going to make them this code this stringent. Well, housing starts and code stringency, they're just chugging right along. So hey, maybe that's not necessarily true either. Average reduction in utility bills. So this is back, and on this slide, this has reminded me to go off on a little rant here, which I've been known to do. Don't get me started on ventilation. But this rant is focused around performance and the performance calculations and how I have zero faith in the validity of them. And it's always been strange to me that the the tree hugging hippie efficiency folks, man, they're all about the performance calculations. To me, I've always been a man, let's just give me the prescriptive numbers. You give me that prescriptive envelope and give me a right-sized HVAC system, and my utility bills are going to be fine. And I just thought this slide to kind of point out the, largely the HVA and the PNL report, yeah, their performance calculations. Well, how in the world? And it one way it favored the builders, one way it favored PNL. And so I've always had just kind of a bad taste in my mouth for the performance calculations, because I think they could be monkeyed with. Number one, I mean, I found glitches in them. Number two, I mean, ResCheck, there was about a 5-year period where every new home in El Paso had foundation insulation on it. Well, because the builders found a loophole in the way ResCheck was doing the performance calculations for foundation insulation. El Paso is a primarily cooling climate. Foundation insulation has almost, that isn't saving you any money in a primary cooling climate. So it's anyway, just a rant on performance calculations generally on that. And if you're in a jurisdiction where you have a supportive city council and city manager as far as getting better homes built, it's a good idea to have when you're adopting a new energy code, just say, hey, we're not going to go below this R value for the wall. I don't care what your performance calculation says. We're not going to go below this efficiency of a window. I don't care what your performance calculation says. And set some baselines, some prescriptive baselines, whether they do performance or ERI. I just think that's generally a good idea, because performance calculations are all over the board. This one, yep, go ahead.
Jason, okay, so real quick, so Sally on here says, please take about 5 minutes and get your rant in on ventilation.
Oh, you don't want to do that. It's on. Okay, all right. 1 minute, real quick.
Just a high level overview.
Well, basically, okay, it's broken. It's broken in the code, but you can't fix it, because if you build in these cookie cutter or DR Horton communities, well, if me and my neighbor have the exact same house, the exact same number of bedrooms, the exact same square footage, well, our ventilation rate by code should be the exact same. Well, if I live alone and don't ever cook at home, leave my windows open all the time, whoa, so I need the exact same ventilation rate as my neighbors, little old couple with 9 cats and 3 dogs, fried 3 meals a day, don't ever turn on the vent hood, don't ever open a window. Well, the code says we need the exact same ventilation rate. And so that's why it's broken in the code. There's a full 5-minute diatribe on it on some previous videos I used to do for Spear. This slide's obviously out of order, but the important here, I touched on this earlier. This is going to the 2021. It's all about positive cash flow. So once that additional mortgage payment is offset by the savings of your energy use. Now, again, NHB is going to refute these numbers, and it's going to be a whole lot worse, but it's cash flow is king. Where are we at? I'm gonna skip that one, running out of time. So this one, one of the Spear's sister organizations, SIA, that covers the Southeast, they did this map's pretty cool. So you're looking at the US average household and what do they spend on housing. And it's shocking, the oldest, in the counties with the oldest housing stock, well, it's the poorest people, and it's the highest percentage of their income. Well, guess what? 50 years from now, the homes we're building today are going to be the oldest homes and the poorest people. And that's why we need to make sure these envelopes and these homes we're building today aren't sapping 12+% of these poor people's income on just housing. It's absolutely ridiculous. The affluent counties, oh man, they're spending 0 to 6%. It's a big difference. Another thing, you look at this map largely aligns. This is the number of mortgages that are 30 days delinquent. Surprise, surprise. States with crummier energy codes have a higher delinquency rate on their mortgages. I think it's correlated, a higher energy bill, mortgages and rent, that's a pretty fixed cost typically. I know landlords went on a rent raising spree not too long ago. COVID didn't help anybody. But what's the variable cost? The bigger variability of the cost, of course, is the utility cost. And so keeping that in line is a huge deal. And again, just looking at, you know, more outdated codes, highest percentage of delinquencies, more modern codes, lowest percentage of delinquencies. It doesn't totally skew, you know, but it's somewhat correlated, no doubt. Now this could be an absolute game changer. This builders heads are just popping all across the country just thinking about this, and this will be a knockdown drag out fight. And if Biden loses the election, this has a snowball's chance in hell of going through. And so, it's just not looking good for that. So if 80% of homes have FHA backing. So imagine if Fannie and Freddie required the homes built of the 2021 to back the mortgage. Well, we would need statewide energy codes at that point, because builders, if 80% of homes are being backed by these mortgages and these mortgages are requiring 2021. Now, the problem I found is they're already like VA requirements on energy codes. And there is definitely a disconnect between the lender and enforcement. But this would certainly be a game changer, and this is going to be a major fight if we can get 2021 envelope tied to lending. That would be fantastic. So back on the more resilient front, this was a great some passive survivability metrics. There was a study done. You see the 6 cities that they looked at. And I'm running out of time, so just let me go to this. So the neat thing about a robust thermal envelope, well, not only are you going to have lower utility costs, well, what happens when the power goes out, right? And oh my gosh, Snowmageddon, that was an absolute terror, right? Well, we're looking at the existing stock. How many days of safety in an existing home versus the 2021 code? Versus, I would argue, the way we should be building homes, thinking about 100 years. And so like passive house standards, we're looking at immortality, right? 200%, 84% chance in surviving above. And so it's just a kind of a no-brainer to build homes better. And when you're looking at habitability without power and passive survivability on weather-related disasters, it's a no-brainer to build better envelopes. In 2022, we had 18 weather-related billion-dollar disasters in this country. That number would have been drastically reduced with better building practices. It's just an absolute no-brainer to build better homes. Fortified homes, for example, require ring shank roofing nails. That's a few $100s added cost to a house to install ring shank roofing nails. The number one in a high wind event, the number $1 disaster generator is when that roof blows off and you have the inside of the building ruined. Well, the ring shank roofing nails, it drastically reduces the probability of that happening. So just some of these little things that it's just shocking to me that we don't. But again, change is hard, and we've always done it this way. And it's just, man, we need to incorporate some of those passive house principles. We need to incorporate some of those fortified principles and just really cut down these billion-dollar disasters. Because I don't know if y'all have noticed, but these crazy intense weather changes, they're getting crazier and more intense. And so this isn't going away. I love this. This is off LBA site. And again, not to Phil Crone, I consider him a friend. He's now the head honcho at Leading Builders of America. And I totally understand they've got a challenge. But their purpose is to preserve the home affordability. But I'd like to think, when they talk about affordability, really only they're talking about is initial costs. Since we've got 4 minutes left, I'm not just real quick. This is from DOE's map, and it's just, you know what? We've only got 4 minutes left. I'm going to skip that one. Let's go to those of you that don't know the National Energy Codes Conference. If you're wanting to just hang out a bunch of myopic tree hugging hippies, which I like to, but I like to also remember them that all you guys do at this conference is preach to the choir. We've got to find a way to change this messaging such that it's palatable to conservative legislatures, so that it's palatable to builders, so that it's palatable to the average EV hating, climate change is a hoax kind of person. And that's not that there's a real disconnect between those two things at that coach conference. So the company I work for now, just kind of highlight some of the resources we have. There's some hyperlinks there. I'll send Randy a PDF of the slides if you want those. This one's my favorite. It's an For any of the new folks on here, I always showed this one for when in almost all the presentations I gave, because, and then my email address is on, oop, that's my old email address. I will change that and send it to Randy. So you've got my new email address, but let me show you this guide that's so cool that I like to always highlight, especially for you new building inspectors. I was going to get into fortified a little bit. I was going to get into passive house a little bit. I thought that, again, I always knew that I'd go over time. I should have known better. So now I'm responsible for all 50 states. So I keep all these state fact sheets updated in real time. So that the day a new code goes into effect, in Utah, for example, they've got that 2012 loophole. So these are all 100% accurate 100% of the time. So if we have any folks on the call that, screen sharing has stopped. Y'all aren't seeing my screen anymore?
No, not yet.
Huh. Okay. Well, I apologize. Here I am talking about stuff. Okay, here we go. My bad.
I was
So
hoping it was popping up in a second.
yeah, no worries. So I keep all 50. I do all 50 states now. So anybody on the call that works in other states, if you want to know what they have, like this is the Utah page. So I keep all these 100% accurate all the time, and it just helps me get into the weeds of what each individual state's doing. And the guide that I was going to show you for the new folks, most of you that have listened to me run my mouth before have seen this, but for any of the new folks, man, if you go on a really crummy insulation install, I used to keep these in the truck. And the great thing about these, again, the majority of insulation installers in Texas are Spanish speaking only. Well, this is 24 pages of not only pictures of what they're talking about, but all in Spanish. It's one of the best resources that there is. And that is right on time. That's funny. I thought, oh my gosh, this might only be 30 minutes. It is clearly not.
No, you did good with that. On that slide that you had that had all the links on it, was that going to link to what you just showed us?
There is a link to that as well. That is on that's this link right here on this one.
Okay. And then the one before it, does it have the stuff, or is it just the Insulation Institute page that you can find on links for other states?
I will put that on there as well. That one's not on here, but I will put that one right here on this one. Other states' energy codes, and I'll put that on there before I send you, and I will fix my email address. That's my old one. And since some of these folks on here have been with me forever, I've got to show you a couple of things. One, let's see here. Hold on. One, I'm always talking about fantasy football. So I lost in the Super Bowl, 143.2 to 143.3. And then that was just brutal. And hold on, I got to show y'all my Cantina update. My Cantina is really I can't find a picture. Oh no, there it is. Those of you that were on my Cantina journey. So this was my COVID project. That's my Cantina I built in my backyard. Anyway, that's it for me. Anybody have any questions?
First of all, Izzy asks, is the Spanish version applicable to all states or not just Texas?
Yes, 100% applicable to all states. That pictorial guide is about installing fiberglass in homes, and it transverses all climate zones. So yes, it would be accurate for everywhere across the nation.
Yeah, because what that talks about, if you look at the code, as we always talk about, it doesn't specifically say grading of any style, but it does spell out the instructions, and you have to follow the manufacturer's instructions on installation, which does read grade 1. So it will be across the board in all states. So I do agree with you on tightening up the building codes. I always talk, even when I go in cities in Texas and Oklahoma, if they just build to compliance, even if it's still the 15, they'd be better off than what some of them are building now. I mean, I don't know why advanced framing isn't just a base way of construction.
Yep.
And while you have to explain it to them, I understand it's habit, but it saves lumber, it increases insulation. It should just not only be Energy Star, it should be across the board, just a code requirement.
100% agree.
Yeah, well, Jason, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming back to visit with us and giving us the stuff that you've learned. I know you've got your hands full. I hear you in the meetings when you've got to do your lineup for the 50 states. It's a lot of information, but thanks for taking the time and coming back. I appreciate it. And then I've
Happy to
got
do it.
just, let me share my screen real quick.
Okay. Do I need
Just
to
talking about our,
stop? There we go.
just our next slide that's coming up, our next webinar that's coming up. Connor's on here. Thanks for him being present with us today. He's actually going to do a webinar for us on April 25th at 10:30. It's titled House Rater Reports and Energy Code and Energy Home Ratings. So he'll talk a little bit about what he and BSI do and what they're doing currently in the realm of energy codes and looking at having some different energy reports. I always try to do some presentations when I go to cities and talk to their plan reviewers about, if you haven't already seen it, you will be seeing ecotrope, REM rate, house rater reports, things other than just a res check. And you got to learn how to read those and identify the issues that you're looking at. So Guadalupe asked to send the invite. The invite will be in the next newsletter. So it'll drop the week before that. And in that newsletter, you'll find that registration link for the next webinar. We possibly could announce it before then as well in one of the social media platforms that we have, but more than likely it will just be on the newsletter that's coming out the third week of next month. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks again for Jason joining us today. I appreciate everybody being here. As we always say, you will receive your course completion, of course, evaluation survey from Kathy Lawrence in about 72 hours. Just complete that, send it back to her. You'll receive your certificate for completion. So thanks again for joining us, and everybody enjoy the rest of your week.